In the quiet town of Amakra, nestled in the eastern part of Nigeria, stood an old government mortuary, Odima Memorial Mortuary, known for its reputation of silence, order, and a chilling stillness that only the dead could maintain. It was a place where sorrow met finality, and where families came to say goodbye to their loved ones. For over 2 decades, the mortuary was run by Papa Ejikim, a deeply religious man in his 60s. He was assisted by 2 attendants, Namdi, a reserved man who barely spoke unless spoken to, and Ifeoma, a curious young lady who had only worked there for a few months. Life in the mortuary followed a predictable pattern: receive the bodies, embalm them, document them, and wait for families to claim them. But everything changed one early Monday morning. Ifeoma had arrived before dawn, as usual, but as she entered the cold room to do the morning check, she screamed. Papa Ejikim and Namdi came running. What they saw would haunt them forever. One of the deceased, Chiamaka Okeke, a 27-year-old woman who had died in childbirth 3 weeks prior, was visibly pregnant. She died already with child, maybe the body swelled. Namdi offered nervously. But Ifeoma, trembling, pointed at the chart. She died after losing the baby during labor. The file says womb evacuated. How is she now, swollen like that? Papa Ejikim, shaken, approached the body and pressed a stethoscope against her cold belly. Silence. Then, a faint flutter. A heartbeat. Rapid. Rhythmic. He stumbled back. This is not possible, he muttered. They kept the discovery secret, unsure of what to do. But the next day, it happened again. This time to Ngozi Ease, a 34-year-old accident victim who had no history of pregnancy. Her stomach too had grown overnight, firm and heavy like that of a woman in her second trimester. By the end of the week, 6 women in the mortuary were found to be carrying babies. All had been pronounced dead for days, some for weeks. All had no signs of life. Yet within them, something was growing. The whispers began in the village. Some said it was a curse from a rejected ritual. Others said the dead were being used in secret cult activities. A few believed it was a sign of judgment, that the veil between life and death had been pierced. But nobody knew the truth. Not even the mortuary staff. Papa Ejikim started locking the cold room at night and refusing to enter without prayer. He sprinkled anointing oil on every drawer and quoted Psalm 91 over each corpse. But the pregnancies didn't stop. In fact, more came. Even bodies recently embalmed began to swell with life. The news leaked eventually. Families of the deceased gathered at the gates of Odima Memorial, demanding answers. My daughter was a virgin before she died. Who got her pregnant in death? Screamed Madame Uju, mother of 19-year-old Adeobi, one of the affected corpses. The police were called. The mortuary was sealed for investigation. Forensic experts came from Abuja. Yet all tests confirmed one shocking fact. The fetuses were real. Growing. Alive. But genetically untraceable to any human man. They bore no father's DNA. Just the mother's. Yet the mothers were clinically dead. Professor Ayatunde Balogun, a seasoned forensic pathologist, said in a televised interview, "What we are witnessing here defies medical science. The uterus of a dead woman should be incapable of sustaining life. This is beyond biology. It is metaphysical." Religious leaders flooded Amakara, prophets, sheiks, herbalists. Some claimed it was a sign of resurrection, others said it was the return of Ogbanj spirits, malevolent beings from the spirit realm using human wombs to re-enter the world. But the most chilling discovery came from Ifeoma herself. By the next morning, the entire town of Amakara was in chaos. The mortuary had been cordoned off by armed officers, and men from the Department of State Services, DSS, had taken over the site. Rumors surged like wildfire. People spoke of demonic pregnancies, federal cover-ups, and secret experiments. Others claimed the mortuary was now a portal between the living and the dead. But nothing compared to what Ifeoma experienced that night. She hadn't told anyone about the red writing on the door. Or the open-eyed corpse. Or the pulsing wombs that throbbed to an invisible drum. It didn't feel like information she could say aloud. It didn't feel like something the living should say aloud. Instead, she went to see Mama Nkechi, the oldest and most feared woman in the town, a known spiritualist and midwife, now living in seclusion by the riverside. The old woman looked at Iphioma for a long time after she shared her story. Then, in a gravelly voice thick with age, she said, "Ah, so it has begun." "What has?" Iphioma whispered. Mama Nkechi picked up a calabash bowl filled with kola nut and cowrie shells. She scattered them on the ground, then stared silently at their arrangement for almost a full minute. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. 1,000 years ago, there was a time when the balance between Anwu, the spirit of the sun, and Anwu, the spirit of death, was broken. A forbidden union occurred, when the dead began to give birth. Not to humans, but to Nkiti, ancient spirits imprisoned by the gods in the spirit realm. Beings who crave rebirth into flesh. She looked at Iphioma with hollow eyes. "You saw them moving inside the wombs, didn't you? You felt the rhythm." Iphioma nodded, unable to speak. Mama Nkechi leaned closer. "That rhythm is not a heartbeat. It is Akpo, the ancestral call. A drumbeat meant only for those chosen to carry forbidden life. If they are not stopped, they will be born into this world. And they will not be children, they will be something else." "But how?" Iphioma asked, clutching her chest. "How did this start? Why now?" The old woman hesitated, then whispered, "Because the covenant was broken. Someone among the living has awakened them. Someone fed them with blood, willingly or not. Back in the mortuary, chaos escalated. 2 bodies had disappeared from their drawers. The guards swore they hadn't let anyone in or out. Surveillance cameras, oddly, went blank for 3 hours. The officers reviewed the footage in horror. When it resumed, the 2 drawers were empty, and a wet trail of bloody footprints led toward the back exit, and then disappeared. Papa Ejikim, now in deep distress, suffered a stroke and was taken to the hospital. Namdi, already disturbed by the events, resigned and vanished from town the next day. This left Iphioma, and now, a DSS agent assigned to investigate her specifically, Agent Tund Falana, a skeptical but determined man who didn't believe in spirits or curses. He was science-minded and ruthless with logic. But even he could not deny what he saw the following night. Agent Tund had set up a hidden camera in the cold room, hoping to catch a staff member tampering with the bodies. What he recorded instead made his hands tremble for the first time in 20 years of service. At 2:13 a.m., one of the bodies, Adeabi, the virgin girl, sat up in her drawer. Her eyes opened wide. Not hollow. Not decayed. Alert. Piercing. Bright gold. She slowly turned her head toward the camera. And smiled. The footage ended in static. The government sent a priest and an imam to perform spiritual rites at the site, followed by a team of scientists to extract fetal samples. One of the embryos, taken from Kayamika's body, was analyzed in a lab in Enugu. The results came back in coded language, but one phrase kept repeating. Non-human DNA. Mitochondrial structure unknown. Behavior mimics pre-dynastic Egyptian cult rituals. Meanwhile, more dead women began to show pregnancy signs. Even newly brought corpses, women who had died in accidents, illness, or suicide, all began developing mysterious pregnancies once stored inside Odima Memorial. The town was under lockdown now. No one in or out without clearance. Military trucks patrolled the streets. Locals began to abandon their homes. Markets shut down. Churches overflowed with vigils and prayers. And through it all, Iphioma kept hearing it. The drums. At night, faint but steady. Dum, dum, dum dum. The same rhythm that beat in those wombs. The same rhythm that began to beat inside her chest. Because Iphioma had begun to feel something too. In her belly. A soft pulse. A quiet stirring. But she was not dead. She was alive. And yet, she was now pregnant. Iphioma sat in the small bathroom of her one-room apartment, legs trembling, the test stick clenched tightly in her fist. 2 lines. Positive. No, 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 she whispered to herself, backing away from the mirror, her breath shallow and fast. She hadn't been with any man. Not even a kiss since her last heartbreak in Nsukka over 2 years ago. This was impossible. But her belly told another story. The subtle weight. The occasional flutter. The rhythmic pulsing that came only at night. Dum, Dum. She had become like them, the corpses in the mortuary. But she wasn't dead. So why did she feel like she was carrying the same thing? Ifeoma reached for her phone with trembling hands and dialed the only person left she could trust, Agent Tund Falana. Tund drove like a madman through the locked-down roads of Amakra to reach Ifeoma. His face, usually composed and calm, now carried lines of panic. When she opened the door, he froze. She didn't need to speak. He saw the faint bulge already forming beneath her dress. "Oh my God," he muttered. Ifeoma pulled him inside, locked the door, and turned up the radio to drown out any sounds. "Tund, it's not normal. It's not human," she whispered. "Something is inside me. I can feel it. And it listens." "Listens?" he asked, blinking hard. She nodded. "I had a dream. I was in the cold room, but it wasn't the same. It was dark. And something was calling me in a language I didn't understand. It was speaking in Igbo, but older than anything I've ever heard. The voice told me I was chosen." Tund shook his head. No. This is psychological. You've been exposed to trauma. We'll run tests. We'll get help." But then, just as he spoke, the lights in the apartment flickered. Dum. It wasn't the radio. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside her. Tund stumbled back as the sound grew louder, like someone knocking from inside her womb. Then something strange happened. His phone lit up on its own. The screen flickered rapidly, then displayed a single word, written in a script that resembled Igbo, yet twisted. Ifeoma stared at it, recognizing it from her dream. "Yulo Ugwo. What does it mean?" Tund asked. She whispered, "It means the House of Debt." Meanwhile, at Odima Memorial, the cold room was not cold anymore. Despite power supply from the generator, the temperature kept rising inside drawer compartments. Ice melted. Steel began to sweat. And the bodies. They were no longer stiff. Kayamika's fingers twitched. Ngozi's toes curled. Adeabi's back arched. And one by one, their eyes opened, glowing with the same golden hue. The sound of drums began to resonate from within the walls of the mortuary, even though no instruments were present. The soldiers guarding the perimeter heard it. A few started screaming, others dropped their rifles and fled into the bush. Inside the control room, one of the security officers, Corporal Ayuba, stared at the monitor. He leaned in, eyes wide with terror. The camera feed from drawer number 13, long empty, now showed a new body. It wasn't one of the registered corpses. It was a man. But only from the waist up. The lower half was smoke. And his face was not human. It had no eyes. Only a smooth, black mask of skin, marked with ancient carvings and bloody tribal sigils. And then, he smiled. The camera exploded in a burst of sparks. Back at Ifeoma's apartment, the air suddenly grew heavy. A deep, ancient voice spoke, not through sound, but inside both her and Tund's minds. Onwu si nan duwi bia. The dead have borrowed the wombs of the living. The balance is broken. Ifeoma grabbed her stomach and screamed. Not in pain. In fear. Because she could feel it now, a presence growing stronger by the hour. Not a child. Not a human spirit. But something with memory. With purpose. Something that had waited. Tund stood frozen. Then he made a decision. "We have to go to Mom and Kechi," he said. "No," Ifeoma said quietly. "She's already dead." He blinked. "What?" Ifeoma stared into the distance, her eyes unfocused. "I saw it last night. In the dream. She was in the spirit world. Bound in chains. Screaming." Tund's heart thudded. "Then who did you see the day you went to the riverside?" Ifeoma turned slowly toward him, voice barely audible. "I think it was her body, but not her soul." The light in the room blew out. And from her belly, the drumbeat quickened. Dum-dum. Dum-dum. Dum-dum-dum-dum. The next 48 hours became a blur across Amakra, a town gripped by terror, confusion, and the slow collapse of the natural order. As word spread that living women were now carrying the same mysterious pregnancies as the dead, panic seized the region. 2 nurses at a nearby hospital reported identical symptoms to Ifeoma. A policewoman collapsed during morning duty and was found whispering in a dead language, clutching her bloated abdomen. By the 3rd night, 7 living women, none of whom had been impregnated by any natural means, were experiencing synchronized symptoms. Unnatural drumbeats from their wombs. Ancient dreams in which masked beings stood at rivers of blood. Whispered commands spoken not through ears, but through bones. The government imposed a total blackout. All mobile networks were cut off. Scientists, priests, imams, and native doctors were flown in by helicopters. No one agreed on anything. Some believed it was interdimensional contamination. Others whispered of an old Igbo curse known as Ugbo Ndunwuruanwu, the boat of the living dead. Only one truth remained: the births were coming. Agent Tun drove Ifeoma and the other affected women, those still sane, to a hidden facility in Nsukka, owned by a retired professor of parapsychology, Professor Majuakonamobile. A man known in secret circles as the Whisperer of Forgotten Things. After running tests, he confirmed what no one wanted to hear. These are not pregnancies, he said, his voice hollow. These are resurrections. But not of humans. Of something older than us all. Something sealed away long before our ancestors began to carve shrines. Something that needs the wombs of the dead, and now the living, to return. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. They are called the Ndi Ichafu. The Forgotten Ones. Spirits exiled from both the land of the dead and the land of the living. Long ago, they tried to possess the bodies of kings and priests. When the gods caught them, they were cursed to eternal formlessness, unless reborn through the balance of death and life. Tun's voice cracked. So this is a ritual. Yes. A stolen ritual. One someone triggered. Someone among the mortuary staff. Perhaps unknowingly. A mistake, or a sacrifice. Ifeoma suddenly gasped. She remembered the day she helped Namdi clean out drawer 13, the same drawer where the masked man appeared on the surveillance feed. Namdi had cut his hand while dragging out an old, sealed casket that had no name tag, just a black cloth soaked in oil. That night, Namdi had burned the cloth near the incinerator, and laughed nervously. These people with all their juju sef. But that cloth, it wasn't just juju. It was a seal. And breaking it had summoned them. It was too late. The first birth happened at 2 a.m. in Nsukka. Not in screams, but in silence. Ifeoma, writhing on the floor of the professor's per-soaked compound, felt her body open. But no blood poured. No tearing pain. Only light. A golden light. And then, a figure emerged. Small. Silent. Glowing. A child. But not. Its eyes opened. Black pools. No iris. No whites. Just, endless night. Tund aimed his gun. What is that? Ifeoma, get away. But Ifeoma was weeping softly, staring at it, lips trembling. I can't, it's in my head, it's talking to me. We are not here to destroy, the being said, though its mouth did not move. We are here to return. To continue what was started when men first rose. We are not demons. We are not angels. We are memory, abandoned by time. Tund pulled the trigger. The bullet stopped midair. Froze. Then reversed, and struck him in the shoulder. He fell screaming. More women began to give birth across the country. Reports poured in of children with ancient tongues, infants walking within minutes, newborns reciting forbidden proverbs, and in some cases, raising the dead. Churches burned. Mosques collapsed. Shrines sang. Something had shifted. The age of men had ended quietly. And the age of memory had begun. 1 year later. Amakara no longer appears on Nigerian maps. The mortuary has been swallowed by an unexplainable sinkhole, black and bottomless. No one dares rebuild. All entry roads to the region are fenced off by a strange electromagnetic field no scientist can penetrate. Across Nigeria, and Africa, sightings of the Children of Silence, as they're now called, increase. They speak in unison. They disappear into dreams. They gather under full moons near rivers. And Ifeoma. She now lives alone on the edge of the forest, raising her son. He is not like the others. He is their voice. And when he speaks, the ground itself listens. He looked up at her one evening and said, "Mother, when I am old enough, I will open the gates fully. And memory shall swallow the world." The wind blew. Trees bowed. Ifeoma said nothing. She only stared at the golden sunset, knowing that mankind's time was ticking. And the forgotten had remembered. We have gotten to the end of this video. Kindly like and subscribe for more.